United Nations humanitarian aid organizations expect severe food shortages in Afghanistan if sufficient resources are not provided to the Afghan people immediately, according to Ramiz Al Akbarov, the United Nations Resident Coordinator and Humanitarian Coordinator in Afghanistan, in an interview with Asharq Al-Awsat in Islamabad. The expected worst-case scenario includes a large-scale migration of the Afghan people towards neighboring countries, including Pakistan and Central Asia. The UN estimates that half of the Afghan people are facing a serious malnutrition crisis. We are working to avoid a major crisis, but anything is possible if the resources are not available, says Alakbarov. The Taliban is fully cooperating with the United Nations efforts to avoid a crisis, and the fact that there is no fighting in the country facilitates these efforts. It is the first time that we have been able to reach all of Afghanistan, he added. The local production of food and agriculture in Afghanistan is enough to feed only half of the population, and the rest of the population faces malnutrition and food shortages that can lead to famine or mass displacement towards neighboring countries, according to the UN official, who added, agricultural production in Afghanistan has suffered greatly due to drought. Half of the Afghan people are seriously malnourished. In the past 4 years, the humanitarian situation in Afghanistan has been and will remain complex, he said. The country was exposed to a very dangerous drought, and this humanitarian crisis was covered up because of the conflict that existed there, especially in the first half of the year. Afghanistan, one of the very poor countries, is facing structural problems that hinder the growth of the agricultural sector in the war-torn country. Various factors have contributed to a crisis in which a large proportion of the Afghan population is unable to access basic needs, such as food, sanitation, and winter supplies. The cold season has begun in the country, and there is a clear shortage of everything. With our help, we will reach 17 million people by the end of the year, says Alakbarov. So far, we have reached 8 million people with food aid, and 1.5 million people with medical assistance. We are grateful to the donors for providing us with much-needed core funds, the UN official added. And people still suffer from malnutrition. We have a lot of people in Afghanistan who wake up in the morning not knowing where their food will come from. There are growing fears in neighboring countries that they will have to receive another wave of Afghan refugees on humanitarian grounds with the arrival of the cold winter in the region. We are trying in every possible way to avoid a situation in which a mass exodus to neighboring countries is necessary, says the UN official. For this reason, our teams are present and working on the ground. More than 20 United Nations agencies are also working on the ground, and a large number of NGOs and international organizations are making great efforts to provide food and basic items to the Afghan people. We do not want a situation like this to continue. In the absence of resources for those providing humanitarian assistance, UN officials say the worst-case scenario for a large-scale exodus from Afghanistan is likely. The situation within 1 month will depend on the level of humanitarian aid that will arrive. The head of the UN mission in Afghanistan refers to the request for $600 million, and that amount was obtained. By the beginning of the year, we were asking for $1.5 billion and we received that money as well. It depends to a large extent on the continuous supplies. One thing that must be emphasized is that the Kabul airport is still open, and the roads between Pakistan and Afghanistan must remain open. It also depends on the snowfall and the roads that remain open in the mountains. If we have the resources, we are determined to avoid the migration of people out of Afghanistan, and if the resources are not available to us, then anything is possible. Ramiz Al Akbarov said there is a very basic need for Kabul airport to remain open so that essential supplies can reach the population. We need to fly to continue the supply of medicines. Most of the food supplies come by truck. We are not only talking about Kabul airport, but about every airport in Afghanistan that should remain open. We need to regulate traffic at all airports to ensure the continued supply of humanitarian aid to the Afghan people. It has not yet been achieved. When asked about the Taliban, the UN official said, "The movement has been very supportive of humanitarian work. One of the features of our humanitarian operations now is that we have access to the whole territory of Afghanistan. This has not been the case before, and the lack of combat in Afghanistan is one of the facilitators of our operations."